Welcome to The Case Files. Tonight, we investigate a man who leveraged the highest echelons of Japanese society to mask a predatory existence, a case that revealed shocking judicial failures, international urgency, and a catalog of horror documented by the criminal himself. This is the case of Joji Obara. As always, my name is Cody. I run this channel with my partner, Katie. Welcome back to The Case Files Minds of Madness. A reminder, if you do find today's video interesting and informative, be sure to like and subscribe for more stories told by yours truly. Now grab a snack and a blanket and let's dive in. Joji Obara was, on the surface, the epitome of Japanese success. Born in 1952, he benefited from immense family wealth derived from real estate. He was highly educated, attending the prestigious Keio University in Tokyo, where he studied law. This education wasn't just a credential. It gave him an acute, analytical understanding of legal loopholes, evidence, and how to operate just outside the jurisdiction of law enforcement. His wealth allowed him to lead a horrifying double life. By day, he was a real estate mogul. By night, he was a systematic, clinical sexual predator. His crimes spanned nearly a decade, from the early 1990s up until his arrest in the early 2000s. And when the police finally moved on him, they didn't just find a few clues. They found an entire library of his crimes. Hidden in his luxury properties, investigators discovered a private archive of approximately 400 videotapes. These tapes meticulously documented his assaults on women, along with corresponding notebooks where Obara, with clinical precision, recorded the details of his methods and the drugs he used. The number of women he attacked is believed to range drastically, from 150 to potentially 400. Obara's modus operandi was terrifyingly consistent. He focused exclusively on foreign women working in the hostess bars of Tokyo's nightlife districts, such as Roppongi and Ginza. These women were often transient or working on restrictive visas, making them marginalized and, crucially for Obara, less likely to be taken seriously by police if they reported an assault. He lured them back to one of his apartments and used a potent chemical cocktail to render them unconscious. His preferred agents were chloroform and the date rape drug GHB. Once incapacitated, the assault would be recorded. The sheer consistency and documentation revealed a chilling, detached view of his victims as disposable objects for his private collection. This pattern of assault, violation, and clinical documentation culminated in two separate fatalities. The first, an Australian model in 1992, and, years later, the British woman whose disappearance finally brought Obara's reign of terror to an end. The first tragedy in the timeline of Joji Obara occurred 8 years before the crime that made him internationally infamous. In 1992, 21-year-old Kurita Simone Ridgway, a vibrant model from Australia, was living in Japan pursuing her career. Kurita was one of the many foreign women who encountered Obara in the Tokyo nightlife scene. On the night of the assault, Obara followed his usual routine of drugging his victim, but this time he used a lethal dose. In his own subsequent notes, he chillingly referred to using too much chloroform. Kurita was rushed to a hospital, but the damage was irreversible. The lethal dose of chloroform caused massive liver failure and brain death. Kurita Ridgway died shortly after. Crucially, the cause of death at the time was noted as an overdose or a medical accident. The poisoning was not conclusively linked to a murder, and Obara walked away. Kurita's death was a profound failure of justice. For 8 years, it remained uninvestigated as a crime, allowing Obara to continue his predatory spree without fear of consequence. For Obara, it was merely a technical error that taught him to be more cautious with dosage, but it did not deter him from his methods. It was only years later, during the search for his second fatal victim, that the videotape of the assault on Kurita and his personal diary entry confessing to the excessive dose were discovered. In the subsequent trial, due to the complexity of establishing intent to murder, he was convicted of manslaughter for Kurita's death, but the damage had been done. Had law enforcement connected Obara's known assault pattern to Kurita's suspicious death in 1992, the nightmare that followed would have been averted. The year is 2000. Joji Obara, having escaped justice for Kurita Ridgway, has continued his activities, confident in his impunity. The systemic failures in 1992 created the opening for the next and most high-profile victim, Lucy Jane Blackman. Lucy was a 21-year-old British former flight attendant, bright and energetic, who had traveled to Tokyo seeking adventure and a chance to save money for her future. She was working as a hostess at the Casablanca bar in the Roppongi district. On the evening of July 1, 2000, Lucy agreed to go on a paid date with a customer. That customer was Joji Obara. Lucy left the bar and was never seen alive again. She didn't return to her apartment. Her disappearance was immediate and absolute. Her friends and roommates quickly raised the alarm, but the initial response from the Japanese police was one of deep, systemic indifference. They dismissed the case, citing that women working as hostesses frequently vanished without notice. They suggested Lucy had simply run off. This devastating inaction would cost critical early hours and days. But Lucy Blackman had a father, Tim Blackman, who would not accept the dismissive response. Tim Blackman flew immediately to Japan and launched a tireless, high-profile search, turning his daughter's disappearance into an international media firestorm. He held press conferences, met with British politicians, and even approached the Japanese Prime Minister. The immense global pressure finally forced the Tokyo Metropolitan Police to treat the case seriously. They established a massive task force, but they were already far behind. The man they were looking for was Joji Obara, and the key evidence was already safely tucked away in his library of horror. The investigation now needed to connect this high-profile disappearance to the known pattern of assaults Obara had perpetrated for years, a connection that should have been made long ago with Kurita Ridgway. As police finally focused their attention on Tokyo's affluent nightlife customers, the pieces slowly began to fall into place. Investigators realized that 3 foreign women had previously reported Obara for drugging and assault, but their complaints had been dismissed as unsubstantiated or complicated. These women provided the crucial links that directed the task force straight to the man in the high-rise. Joji Obara was finally arrested in April 2002, initially on charges related to the earlier assaults. The true horror was uncovered during the subsequent search of his properties. This search yielded the hundreds of videotapes, the clinical diaries, and the confession regarding the death of Kurita Ridgway. But the most devastating discovery had been made months earlier, in February 2001, while the search for Lucy was still active. Near one of Obara's beachfront condos in Miura, south of Tokyo, human remains were found buried in a shallow grave in a coastal cave. It was Lucy Blackman. Her body had been dismembered. Her head was encased in a block of concrete. The extent of the mutilation was such that investigators could not determine the exact cause of death. However, the location of the body, its state, and the proximity to Obara's property left no doubt. He had not only killed her, but had gone to extreme, deliberate lengths to destroy the evidence and hide the body. The evidence against Obara was now overwhelming, even without a definitive cause of death for Lucy. The videotapes and diaries established his pattern. The location of Lucy's remains pointed directly to him, and the previous victim reports cemented his status as a serial predator. He was formally charged with the abduction, dismemberment, and disposal of Lucy Blackman, as well as the manslaughter of Kurita Ridgway, and over a dozen rape charges. The evidence was conclusive, yet the path to justice in Japan's complex legal system would be long, painful, and deeply frustrating for the victims' families. The initial trial would last nearly 8 years. The trial of Joji Obara became a lightning rod for criticism of the Japanese legal system, particularly its handling of forensic evidence and its initial bias against foreign victims. The Tokyo District Court delivered its initial verdict in 2007. The ruling was a devastating split. Obara was found guilty of the manslaughter of Karita Ridgway and guilty of 8 counts of rape. However, in a shocking move that horrified the international community, the court found him not guilty of the murder of Lucy Blackman. The reason? The lack of definitive forensic evidence linking him directly to her death due to the dismemberment and destruction of the body. For the Blackman family, this acquittal was incomprehensible. Critics pointed to similar Japanese cases, like the conviction of Masumi Hayashi, where circumstantial evidence was deemed sufficient. The ruling seemed to confirm the fears that the destruction of evidence, coupled with police inaction, had nearly allowed Obara to escape accountability for Lucy's life. The public prosecutor immediately appealed the acquittal. The fight for Lucy Blackman was far from over. In December 2008, the Tokyo High Court delivered the crucial second verdict. The court overturned the lower court's ruling. Joji Obara was now found guilty of the charges relating to Lucy Blackman, including abduction, dismemberment, and disposal of her body. Obara immediately appealed the High Court decision to the Supreme Court of Japan. 2 years later, in July 2010, the highest court in the land rejected his final appeal. The sentence was upheld. Joji Obara would serve a life sentence for his crimes, including the manslaughter of Karita Ridgway, multiple counts of rape, and the abduction and dismemberment of Lucy Blackman. Justice, though delayed and imperfect, was finally served. The Obara case fundamentally altered how the world viewed crime in Japan and led to uncomfortable scrutiny of police procedures. The Blackman family eventually accepted a significant mimaikan, or condolence payment, from Obara and used the funds to establish the Lucy Blackman Trust, LBT Global, a charity dedicated to supporting the families of missing or murdered persons overseas. The case of Joji Obara remains a chilling testament to the power of privilege and the devastation of systemic bias. It took a decade of assaults, the death of 2 young women, and immense international pressure to finally tear away the mask worn by a man who documented his own crimes, believing he was above the law. Joji Obara remains incarcerated, a serial predator whose crimes are now permanently documented in the annals of criminal history. A perpetual warning from The Case Files, Minds of Madness. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next case file. Hey there! Before you take off, we'd just like to take a second and say that we really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Katie and I are so grateful for the incredible Case Files community, so thank you for being a part of it. If you want to help the Case Files continue to grow, one of the easiest things you can do is leave a like on this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well and select all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. We want you to know that we truly appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.